In his sleep, Robert Stevens was calm and smiling with satisfaction. His arm was thrown over Peg's body. They lay in an embrace, and his palm lay tenderly on her soft breast. A wonderful aroma emanated from her. Hair, perfume, her natural smell. How he loves this smell and how he misses it. They haven't slept together for so long. He hasn't hugged her or felt her presence in so long. Gradually coming to his senses, he began to understand that everything was wrong. He hugs not his one true love, but a pillow. His hand is not on her breast, but simply on the bulge of the pillow. He tried to open his eyes to understand where he was, but his eyes would not open. He was in pain, very, very painful, in all parts of the body. He began to hear sounds, beeps, pulsating air, footsteps and voices. Feel the tube in the nose, needles and wires, and everything hurts. It must be me. In the hospital. He understood. But the smell of Peg, it's still in the air. This part of the dream was real. Seeing nothing, he was confused. All he knows for sure is terrible pain. He lay motionless, waiting for someone to hurt him. Suddenly, Peg found him and came to end his life. And then he heard. "Hi, Robert." It was her voice. She really is here, wherever here is. But how can this be? How did she find him? Would he really hurt him again? No, 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 he muttered, trying to move. It was painful to move. He struggled a little, then lay down, motionless. "Calm down, Robert. Everything will be fine." Peg's gentle voice sounded, trying to give him confidence. "You are in the hospital, but everything will be fine with you. I'm so happy I found you." He tried to get up again, but again found that he could not move. "Don't try to move, dear. You're in a cast and bandages. Do you remember what happened?" He was silent. He didn't remember, but he wasn't sure he should remember, and he didn't know if Peg was the cause of his injuries. Well, he knew that she was the cause of his old heart wound, but he didn't know if she was the reason he was wounded this time. "You took a terrible beating," Peg told him softly. "Some bandits attacked you and beat you until you lost consciousness. Your bones are broken and your internal organs are damaged, but the doctors say that you will recover and gain strength." Robert's mouth was dry. He wanted to speak, but his tongue and lips were too dry to work together. Seeing that he was trying to speak, Peg wet a washcloth and pressed it to his mouth to give him some moisture. "Why are you here?" asked Robert. "How did you find me? Are you the one who set those people on me?" She was stunned. How could he imagine such a thing? After a moment, she stood up. "I must tell you that you have woken up. They will want to come in and examine you. Then I'll call the girls and Charlie." With tears in her eyes, she left the room. "I'll come back and we'll talk again," she told the nurse. And soon men and women in scrubs were gathered around his bed. When she was finally allowed into the room, she walked over to his bed and gently took Robert's hand. She didn't know if he was still asleep. It was difficult to judge this from his closed eyes. "Darling, I didn't do anything bad to you," she said quietly. "Why do you think so?" "No, I love you. And since you left the hospital in Columbus and left me, there hasn't been a minute that I haven't thought about you and wondered what happened to you." Robert didn't move. Minutes passed. Finally, he turned his head in her direction. "Are you and Charlie still together?" he asked softly. "No, Robert. Charlie and I were never together. Charlie is our friend. You have always been and will be the only man for me." At this, Robert turned away from her. Why did she come all this way after all these years just to lie to him? She saw it and closed her eyes. So much time has passed, and she is already lying. And he knows it. But she must, at least for now. Finally, he decided to change the subject. "Why can't I see? Am I blind? The doctors say that your eyes were damaged during the beating. They were closed to let them heal. They say your eyesight may be affected, but you won't go blind. In a few days, the bandages will be removed, and then we will know more." "We? You mean me?" he thought. "You still haven't said why you're here. I'm here because you are my husband and I love you." After your disappearance, we looked for you all the time, but you were simply nowhere to be found. Every evening after work and every weekend, Charlie and I drove along all the streets, talking to everyone we met, trying to find you. I was confused. We didn't know if you were alive or dead. The head injury you sustained in the bicycle accident had changed you, and we were afraid you wouldn't be able to cope on your own. We searched for weeks. In the end, we had to give up. Here we go again. Peg and Charlie. Charlie and Peg. He wasn't wrong, and now she admits it. Does she think he's stupid? But I never stopped loving you and hoping that one day we would be together again. Robert is tired. He was confused, his head was pounding, and his body was aching. It was wonderful to hear Peg's voice and smell her. But he's so tired. I need to sleep, he said quietly. I'll go back to the hotel, make a few calls, freshen up a little, and come back tonight, Peg said. She leaned over the bed and kissed him tenderly on the lips. He didn't answer, already asleep. As she walked past the aid station, Robert's doctor approached her. Miss Stevens, could you spare us a few minutes and help us with your husband's medical history? All we know is that a week ago, he was brought to our emergency department unconscious and badly beaten. We accepted him as an unknown person. He had no identification on him, and his friends in the homeless camp knew him simply as Bobby or the mayor. Officers who responded to a 911 call about the beating searched his bag and found a piece of paper with a phone number on it. That's how we contacted you. Peg shook her head. Robert was an executive at a telecommunications company where we live, in Ohio. 7 years ago, he was in a terrible bicycle accident and suffered a closed head injury. He was in a coma for 5 weeks. When he finally came out of it, he was in a darkened state. The trauma had changed him. He went from being a confident, cheerful, and very smart person to being scared and nervous. My loving husband has turned into a suspicious introvert. We discovered that he had a metal plate in his skull, undoubtedly from a previous accident. Did he have any other pre-existing conditions that we should know about? Only high blood pressure, which he controlled with medication. And after the accident, his blood pressure seemed to return to normal. How did he feel when he entered? Well, to assess his condition, we carried out a full set of tests. Apart from the fact that he was poorly fed and in dire need of a dentist, he turned out to be healthy. And of course, since he was just now regaining consciousness, we weren't able to do any behavioral testing. If I may ask, how did it happen that he lives here on the street? Once he recovered from the immediate trauma of the accident, he began receiving physical and occupational therapy at the hospital, and he began to visit a psychotherapist in connection with the mental changes that we observed. All these activities were exhausting for him in his condition, but physically, he made good progress. On the mental side, things were more complicated. Somehow he became convinced that Charlie Ford, his best friend, and I conspired behind his back and caused the accident by trying to kill him. No matter how much we denied it, he was convinced of it and began to fear us. When the time came for him to be discharged home, he managed to sneak out of the hospital and disappear. Charlie and I, the police and all our friends searched and searched, but he just disappeared, like a ghost. That was the last thing we knew about until I got a call 6 days ago. Thank God he saved my phone number. Thank you, said the doctor. You filled in some gaps, and as we continue to monitor him, we'll try to fill in others. As soon as he comes to his senses, we will schedule a consultation with a psychologist. By monitoring his blood pressure, breathing, and pulse, I can tell that when he found out you were in the room, his anxiety levels skyrocketed. If this continues, we may have to ask you to stop visiting. Is there anyone else who could be with him, who wouldn't cause this kind of reaction? I'll see if one of his daughters can come. When he left, they were girls, but now they are already young women. He has no reason to be afraid of them. Of course, he has no reason to be afraid of me either, except in his imagination. With these words, Peg left for the hotel. She was exhausted, fearful, and guilty. Her thoughts were racing. Although she loved and missed Robert dearly, life had returned to normal after his departure, and his return would undoubtedly complicate things. And what to do with Charlie? 6 days ago in Ohio, Peg was drying herself off with a towel, having finished her post-sex shower. Charlie just needed it to be that nasty. Since Robert's death, Charlie Ford had been satisfying her sexual needs. But if sex with her husband was a gentle, loving session of mutual care and attention, then Charlie had to be athletic. Sex with him was like a wrestling match. And after 6 years of resistance, she finally gave in. And after so many years of living together and having regular sex, her connection with her missing husband faded, and her feelings for Charlie increased. He became a kind of support for her after the accident, and then after Robert's disappearance. She wouldn't allow herself to call it love, but it would be difficult to describe the difference. Oh, but there were differences. Robert was educated and refined. Charlie had graduated from high school and was smart, but street smart, not sophisticated and cultured. She and Robert loved to talk about books and attended the opera. Charlie liked action movies and NASCAR racing. No, she came to rely on Charlie and developed feelings for him, but he could never replace Robert. "You know, it will soon be 7 years since he ran away," Charlie said, lying on the bed, his body exposed. "You can declare him dead and we can get married." "Yes, I know how much time has passed," she replied, taking her underwear out of her dresser drawer. "We have already talked about this. I still hope he will be found. And Charlie, I appreciate everything you do for me and the girls, but I still see you as a friend, Robert's friend, but not as a husband. And Charlie, please don't wipe yourself on my sheets. I don't want there to be stains when I wash them." She carefully pulled on her panties. At that moment, the phone rang. She took it from the dresser and saw an unfamiliar number. She almost hung up, but something told her that she should answer. "Hello? Is this Mrs. Stevens?" asked a female voice. "Yes, I am Margaret Stevens. I'm calling from the Oklahoma Medical Center. A man whom we believe to be your husband has been brought to our emergency department. He suffered greatly from the beating. This phone number was found with the man's belongings at a homeless camp. We have this man listed as unknown, but a woman at the camp told the paramedics that his name was Bobby Stevens. I'll be with you as soon as I can catch the plane," she answered quickly. "Robert has been found," she exclaimed, running up and hugging Charlie. "He's alive. He's in a hospital in Oklahoma. I have to fly." She went to the closet, took out a suitcase, and began to pack her things. "Will you take me to the airport, or should I call for a ride?" she asked over her shoulder. "I'll take you. I'll take a shower while you pack," Charlie said, trying to hide his disappointment. Robert was his friend, and he was sincerely glad that he was alive. But damn, this really messes up his plans. They agreed that she would take the first plane out, and he could arrive later, after she could assess the situation. Returning to her hotel room, the first thing Peg did was call Charlie. "Charlie, I think it's better for you not to come. He gets very excited when I mention you. Seems to think we have something to do with this accident. Did you tell us about us?" "No, he is not in the right shape to digest this information. He almost never regains consciousness. His eyes are bandaged, his arms and legs are in plaster, there are internal injuries. In addition, he has a concussion and traumatic brain injury. I should have been there, could have kept him out of the hospital." "Well, this train has already left. This morning, before Robert woke up, a police officer came to see me, asked a few questions and showed photographs. He lived in a homeless camp under a bridge. All of his belongings were stuffed into a shopping cart and secured to it. He was sleeping on the ground, covered with a couple of old blankets that he picked up from a junkyard, I think. So what Pedro said is true. He thought and asked, 'Did you find anything useful?' All they found was a piece of paper with my phone number and a family photo from our last Christmas together. He cut my face out of it, so it was just him and the girls. He was always a smart guy," Charlie chuckled. "Charlie, stop it. It's not funny. The man was destroyed and he did absolutely nothing to deserve it. He deserves to have his old life back. I'm afraid this won't happen. I'm hanging up. Should call the girls. They love their father and are very worried. Don't come here. I'll let you know if anything changes." With that, she took out her tablet and set up a Zoom call with the girls. When Robert disappeared, Lisa was in 7th grade and Laura was in 8th grade. Both are now in college. Lisa at Northern Illinois and Laura at Northwestern. Thank God Robert created this fund for them, and once he managed to get enough money into it to pay for their education, Peg didn't know, but he did it. Like Dad? Lisa asked as soon as the connection was established. Peg waited a moment to answer until Laura appeared. Your father woke up today. He is very disoriented. He still has that paranoia we saw after the bike accident. He seems convinced that Charlie and I had something to do with it. We may need one of you to come and stay with him because the doctor says my presence might upset him too much. Why does he think that you and Uncle Charlie were involved in this? Asked Lisa. What did you both do to make him think that? Did you have an affair before the accident? Peg pretended to be offended. I love your father and always have, and Charlie can never take his place. I don't know what put the idea into his head that something else was going on, but somehow it did. Tomorrow morning, I have my last exam before the summer holidays, and after that I can come, said Lisa. As an older sister, she had long been accustomed to taking the initiative. I can come next week, Laura said, not wanting to be left out and eager to see her father again. When Peg returned to the hospital, she was told that Robert was seeing doctors and she would have to sit in the waiting room for a while. When she reached the visitor's room at the end of the corridor, she saw a rough-looking woman sitting and waiting. She was younger than Peg, but she clearly had a hard life. She was clean, wearing an old dress that might have been in fashion 10 or 12 years ago. It was pretty worn. The black hair was not styled at all, just combed. They were starting to turn gray. The woman timidly raised her head as Peg approached her. They told me I could sit here, she said defensively, as if expecting that she could be kicked out at any moment. I came to see my friend. Knowing where Robert lived, Peg guessed that this woman might be from Robert's camp. Smiling, she sat down next to the woman and asked, Are you Robert's friend? The woman looked embarrassed. My friend is Bobby, she answered. He is the mayor. Is it true? There is a mayor here. And do you know him? The woman laughed. He's not a real mayor. We call him that because he takes care of everyone who has problems. Peg took a photograph from her purse. Is this Bobby? She asked, showing it to the woman. Yes, this is Bobby, but the photo is old. He doesn't look like that now. He is older. She hesitated for a minute, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, she extended her hand. I'm Mary, Bobby's friend. Some people call me Deputy Mayor. Peg looked at the woman and appreciated her appearance. She was dark-skinned, but her facial features did not indicate any particular race. She could be pretty, thought Peg, if I did my hair and makeup. Peg came over and took her hand. I'm glad to meet you. I'm Peg, Robert's wife. Mary recoiled, pulled her hand back, and covered her mouth in horror. Are you she? He told me about you, about what you did to him. My God, have you come to kill him? Please don't hurt him. I love him, and he loves me. Mary slowly reached into her satchel and pulled out a knife. She stood up and stood between Peg and the corridor leading to Robert's room. I won't let you hurt him, she said, holding the knife in her hand. He protects me, and I protect him. Somehow, Peg remained calm and in control. Mary, I'm not here to hurt Robert. I love him too, and want to help him get better. Please put the knife away before anyone sees you. I don't want the security to create problems for you. Please come and sit down so we can talk. I promise I haven't hurt Robert before, and I won't hurt him now. Mary stood her ground, but hearing approaching footsteps behind her, she slipped to her chair and sat down, hiding the knife under the seat cushion. Peg smiled at her. It looks like we both love the same man, she said. Thank you for looking after him and being friends with him. I've been looking for him for years, ever since he escaped from the hospital. He said he had to run away because you and your lover were going to kill him so you could be together. Mary, Robert was a successful leader. We had a wonderful life. We have 2 wonderful daughters, we live in a beautiful home, and we have dear friends who all live in Ohio. But Robert was in a terrible accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was in a coma for a long time, and when he woke up, for some reason he decided that my friend Charlie and I had arranged for him to be hit by a pickup truck on his bicycle in an attempt to kill him. That's not true, Mary. Charlie is Robert's best friend, and none of us would hurt him. Robert's brain injury made him suspicious and nervous. Tell me, Is he still like this? I'm the only one he trusts, she answered. He even lets me take his ATM debit card when he needs money to help someone and when he gets headaches. He doesn't allow anyone else to take it. At that moment, a nurse appeared in the corridor and said that Robert could receive visitors, but only one at a time. Mrs. Stevens, would you like to come with me? She said, smiling. Looking at Mary without the same smile, she said that she could see him later. Mary, why don't you go first? Peg said kindly. I know Robert will want to see you, and I haven't quite won his trust yet. Mary jumped up and, thanking her, almost ran along the corridor to Robert's room. Approaching the door, she slowed down and froze, looking at her friend, covered in a cast, with tubes and wires. When she saw the bandages over his eyes, she gasped. Bobby, it's me, she finally said. Can you hear me? She slowly walked towards the bed. Mary, yes, I can hear you. How did you get here? I came by bus, she said proudly. First, I went to the Y, gave them $5, and they let me take a shower. Then I went to the laundromat and washed some clothes. Then I asked the man at the bus stop how to get to the hospital, and he told me. Bobby, she said quietly. She's in the waiting room. Peg. I talked to her, showed him his knife, and told her not to harm you. She promised she wouldn't do this. She said she loved you, and I told her that I loved you too. We never talked about it. But after those guys beat you up and I couldn't help you, I felt it in my heart. All I could do was call Speedy and the other guys to come and drive these people away. Mary moved closer to the bed. Peg seems nice. She let me come to you first because she says you still don't trust her. She's right, I don't trust her. She swore to me that she didn't hurt you, and she doesn't want to hurt you now. Says you're disoriented after the accident. Mary, I suspected that before my accident, he put quotation marks with his only good hand. Something was going on. I don't know for sure if Peg had a hand in setting me up, but I'm sure Charlie did. He's been trying to get Peg away from me for a long time. At that moment, a nurse burst into the room with a trolley and began taking readings. She told Mary that Robert would soon need rest and suggested that she go and tell his wife that she could come and see him for a moment. I don't want to see her, Robert replied. She was so kind to me that I think you should let her visit you, Mary said, leaving the room. Robert was too weak to argue, so he just lay down and let the nurse do her thing. A few minutes later, Peg came in. Only 1 minute this time, the nurse said, trying to protect Robert. He needs to rest. Okay, just a minute, Peg replied. Robert, I just wanted to let you know that Lisa will be here tomorrow. I know you still don't trust me, but you can trust that Lisa loves you and has been beside herself since you left. Please be nice to her. Will, thank you for inviting her to come. Could you do me a favor and take Mary to camp? I don't like it when she rides the bus. Is there anything I should know about her? Mary has schizophrenia. She is very smart, graduated from Arizona State University, and was starting a teaching career when she started hearing voices. She lost everything and came to the camp about 3 years ago. She does a good job of taking her medications, but sometimes forgets. And sometimes she skips them on purpose because she doesn't like how they make her feel. Judging by the way she acted today, I'd say she's missed a few days, which means she may be going psychotic soon. She says she loves you and you love her. You are together? We are friends, good friends, but not a couple. Are you sleeping with her? No, not in that sense. But when one of us feels the need for release, we help each other. That's all I can say about this. She has a very unusual appearance. What is its origin? Asked Peg. Robert laughed. It's complicated. Her great-grandfather was a French missionary to China. He believed that peace between nations would come only when racial differences were erased. He married a Chinese woman and gave instructions to their children that they should marry representatives of a different race. This practice was passed down from generation to generation. Thus, Mary is part white European, part Chinese, part African, part Samoan, part East Indian, and part Native American. Wow, Peg said. No wonder she looks exotic. She has beautiful dark skin. The nurse walked to the door and gave Peg a withering look. I have to go, said Peg. "I love you. Lisa will arrive tomorrow. I'll take care of Mary. Get some rest." Peg caught up with Mary, walking towards the elevator. "Robert asked me to give you a ride. Do you mind?" "Oh, yes, if you don't mind. I don't like riding the bus. I'm always afraid of missing my stop." "Okay, come with me, and we'll make one stop along the way," Peg said, looking at her smartphone. She found a listing and location of a spa and hair salon, with evening hours near her hotel. The elevator just arrived and they went down to the parking lot. Mary started to tell Peg where the camp was, but Peg asked her to wait until the next stop. "Robert said that you have some medications that need to be taken every day. Did you take them today?" "No, sometimes they make you drowsy, and I wanted to be alert so I could get to the hospital." "Do you have them with you?" "Yes. I can't leave them with my things. Otherwise, someone will steal them. They're here in my bag." "Why don't you take them now?" Peg said, getting a bottle of water from the center console. Mary rummaged through her bag, pulled out a couple of bottles of pills, and took some medicine. Peg drove to the spa, parked, and they went inside. Mary wondered what they were doing there until she heard Peg arranging for her to have a full treatment. A mineral bath, a manicure, a pedicure, and a haircut. "Let these ladies take care of you, Mary," she said. "I need to do some shopping and I'll be back before you finish." She gave the clerk who married Mary a $50 bill and said, "Take care of her. This is a very special woman," she winked, "and she may need some extra attention. I want you to become her friend and helper." The employee smiled, agreed, and took Mary away. Peg left the building and drove to the nearest department store, where she spent half an hour choosing new clothes, underwear, socks, and practical shoes for Mary. Not fancy outfits, but practical, durable, and warm shirts and jeans. Returning to the spa, she selected an outfit from her purchases and gave it to the employee to change Mary before leaving. Soon, Mary emerged from the curtained doorway, transformed. Hairstyle, a beautiful dress, a little makeup, and a smile that never left her face. "Look at me, Peg. I'm beautiful again," she exclaimed. Peg and the women tending to her oohed and ahed and showered her with compliments. "You are lovely, Mary." "Let's go have dinner," Peg said, smiling. They went to a small cafe that Peg had discovered a few days before. Mary felt uneasy at first, but Peg's confident presence soon calmed her down and she relaxed, enjoying the delicious meal. "Why are you so kind to me?" Mary asked when they finished dessert and pie. "Partly because you are Robert's friend, and therefore mine. Partly because you are a woman and I hate to see a woman who is unlucky. And to be completely honest, it's partly because I want to understand what's going on in my husband's life so I can try to improve my relationship with him. By the way, he told me how important you are to him, so I kind of thank you for that. But the main reason is that I like you. I got a call about Robert and I caught the first plane and was here for almost a week. But he only woke up today, so I was pretty lonely. It's nice to make a new friend. I don't want to think about you going back to camp and sleeping on the street," Peg said as they walked to her car. "Would you like to come to my room today and sleep in a real bed with clean sheets?" "Thank you, but I have to go back and take care of my things and protect Bobby's things. If I don't do this, everything will be taken away. Besides, I don't mind my life. I got used to living outside the home and not making demands on people. Where I live, no one expects anything." As they drove, Peg asked questions. "Why is he called the mayor?" "Bobby is very kind. He looks after people. He knows how to get money, so if someone gets into a difficult situation, he helps him. If someone is detained for vagrancy or begging, he can help with bail. But he will not help those detained for theft or causing harm, he says. No one should go to prison just because of bad luck. But a crime is a crime, and you have to pay for it." "What else does he do?" "Give advice. Most people in the camp don't know much. They are there because they are mentally ill, drug addicts, or stupid. Bobby helps them figure it out if they have problems. He is smart and educated, and when a dispute arises, he behaves like a judge. Doesn't take sides, but tries to find a way out for both sides." "What happened when he was beaten? What was it?" Some bandits from another camp heard that he had money. They came to rob him. He never keeps money on himself, only withdraws it from an ATM when he needs it, so he didn't have any. They didn't believe him. And I had the card because he had another headache, and he sent me to get money for Speedy's bail. They tried to get him to tell them where the money was. I came back, saw what was happening, and called a group of our guys to help Bobby. They came and pulled them off and saved Bobby, otherwise he would have been killed. Tell me about the debit card. Don't know. He has one. There's always money there. He doesn't use it often, mostly just to help people. Most have only the money they get from begging. Bobby has more, but he doesn't tell anyone where they come from or how many there are. I am the only one he trusts to withdraw from the card if he cannot do it himself. Where does he get money every day? Mostly moonlighting. There is a day labor agency a couple of blocks from the camp. Sometimes he does landscaping, sometimes he does painting work, well, and everything like that. That makes sense. He was always helpful around the house. I took care of the yard and put the house in order. When they arrived at the overpass under which the camp was located, Mary fell silent. "Why don't you drop me off here?" she asked quietly. "I can walk the rest of the way." "I want to see Robert's house," Peg said, continuing to drive. "Please, it will be awkward for me, and I'm sure Bobby would like to maintain his privacy. He is a very private person. Thank you for your kindness and generosity. Today was the best day I've had since things started to get confusing for me. But please allow me to maintain my dignity and respect Bobby's boundaries." Peg slowed down and looked for a place to pull over and stop. "Okay, Mary, maybe another day. I'm glad you had a good day and you're always welcome. Thank you for being such a good friend to Robert." She placed a business card in Mary's hand. "Here is my mobile phone number. Please call if you need anything or if you want me to give you a ride back to the hospital. Robert is worried about you riding the bus alone." Mary didn't answer, but she took the card and put it in her pocket. The car stopped, and Mary got out, clutching bags in her hands. Peg watched her walk to the end of the bridge and then disappear down the embankment. She turned the car around and headed back to the hotel. Mary grabbed her bags and headed towards her campsite. All eyes were fixed on her. Several men whistled. Then Speedy asked where she was and what was in the bags. "I went to the hospital to see Bobby. He was badly beaten. Lots of broken bones and blindfolds on my eyes. Those bastards almost killed him." "What's in the packages? How did you manage to pack everything?" Mary hesitated before answering. She was sure they were hoping she had money or something in the bags that they could steal and sell. "Bobby's wife was there from Ohio. She bought me clothes and gave me a ride. She seems like a good woman, but Bobby doesn't trust her." One of the women asked mockingly, "Did you tell his wife that you had sex with her husband?" "No, I didn't say so. She just said that we are friends." With these words, she took her bags, walked to her place, and carefully put her things away along with hers. A couple of people followed her, and she pointedly took out her knife, saying that she was tired and wanted to rest. Then she spread out her mat and lay down. She clutched the knife in her hand and kept her eyes open until she was sure that the others would leave her alone. At this time, Speedy came up and thanked her for posting bail for him. He promised to look after her, so she could get some sleep. "You and the mayor are my only friends," he said. "I am indebted to you for helping me." With that, he sat down next to her on the blanket and tried to look strong, holding an empty beer bottle as a weapon. Decided that in Bobby's absence, he would become Mary's assistant as deputy mayor. Peg drank 2 glasses of wine at dinner in the hotel restaurant. Several men came over to ask if she was looking for company, but left when she said she was not. Peg has a lot to figure out. She was truthful when she told Robert that she and Charlie had not met before the accident. She knew that Robert was aware that Charlie had been making moves on her for some time. Charlie is divorced, and the 3 of them spent a lot of time together. Charlie was at their house almost every day, joining them in everything they did. He was cheerful and helpful, and at times it seemed like he was an integral part of their family. He doesn't have his own children, but he loves Lisa and Laura very much, who called him Uncle Charlie. About 3 months before Robert's accident, Charlie began to come to the house at times when, as far as he knew, Robert was not at home. started pestering Peg to take their friendship to the next level. He knew that she was attracted to him and was head over heels in love with her. Charlie is the top salesman at the local Lincoln dealership and makes a decent income. Although they never talked about it, he knew that Peg came from a wealthy family and would receive a significant inheritance when her parents died. Robert made very good money from his job, but Charlie saw that they were living above the level that Robert's salary provided and believed that their lifestyle was subsidized by Peg. At first, Peg was annoyed by Charlie's advances. She loved her husband and had no desire to have Charlie or anyone else as a side hustle. She told Charlie about this as kindly as possible. Now I realized that I was too soft with their friend because he did not want to back down. His attention was so obvious that it created tension in their three-way friendship. Robert was getting impatient and couldn't understand why Peg wasn't taking more drastic measures. Peg could not have stopped his actions more decisively. Robert was an avid cyclist, and one of the things they enjoyed doing together was going on long rides around the countryside. They enjoyed fresh air, healthy exercise, tranquil scenery, and friendly company. But even traveling together began to feel tense, as Charlie sought to be closer to Peg. That's why Robert was riding alone when a pickup truck pulled into the bike lane and hit him in the back of the head with the extended rearview mirror on the passenger side. The bike flew to the side of the road, and Robert crashed headfirst into a pole. Witnesses called 911, and Robert was taken to hospital near death. It all happened so quickly that descriptions of the pickup truck conflicted, and it could not be identified. It wasn't even sure whether the pickup was blue or green. Even though it all happened 7 years ago, as Peg sat sipping wine after dinner, the memories of those days were as fresh as if it were yesterday. That day, after Robert rode off on his bicycle, Charlie found her in the kitchen. The girls were visiting friends, and they were left alone. Charlie came up behind her and put his arm around her waist. He stroked her neck and kissed her ear. "We are alone. I know you had the same thoughts about me as I do about you," he whispered, running his hands along her front and pressing his back against her. "Why don't we go upstairs and relieve the tension? Robert will never know about this." He turned her around to face him, then leaned down and kissed her on the lips. They had exchanged friendly kisses before, but this one was completely different. There was nothing platonic about the way he pressed his lips to hers, and his hands moved up and down her back, squeezing her buttocks, then slid up and pulled her into his arms. At first, she resisted, muttering, "No, no," and trying to push him away. But then the kiss began to warm her up. She laid her head on his shoulder, shuddered, and allowed him to take her hand and lead her to the stairs and bedroom. They barely began to climb the stairs, hugging, when there was a loud knock on the front door. Frightened, she stopped and tried to turn around to go downstairs and open the door. Charlie tried to hold her back, not wanting to miss this chance, but she pulled away and panicked when she saw 2 police officers on the street. A thought flashed through her head. "I know what I did was wrong, but what does the police have to do with it?" "Really?" She opened the door nervously, and one of the police officers asked if she was Mrs. Stevens. She confirmed that she was, and he said, "Sorry to break the news, but there has been an accident and your husband is in the emergency room at Good Samaritan Hospital." "Is he badly injured?" she asked, feeling her heart pounding. "I don't know what condition he's in," the policeman answered quietly. "But usually we're not sent to such incidents unless they're serious." Peg felt the ground disappear from under her feet. She was already going to let Charlie have her, and Robert was wounded and maybe dead. The roar in her ears was deafening. Just as she began to fall, Charlie grabbed her under the arms and helped her to her feet. "Thank you, officers," he said politely. "I will help my friend's wife get to the hospital." He secretly smiled to himself, thinking that these policemen would provide him with a reliable alibi. This feeling quickly passed when he realized that he had lost his chance to have sex with Peg. Having regained her composure, Peg freed herself from Charlie's embrace and got down to business. She gathered her purse and keys and headed to the garage. "You don't want me to take you? Are you still in shock?" Charlie asked caringly. "No, Charlie. I don't want to be around you after what you almost made me do. I'll get there myself. Please look after the girls. I'll call when I know more and you can tell them what's going on." With these words, she walked out the door and hurried to the hospital. Peg, the girls, friends, and Charlie stayed at Robert's bedside for the 5 weeks he was in a coma. He underwent several operations. First, they relieved the pressure on his brain. Then they installed a steel plate in the place where the skull was crushed by the blow. Only the helmet prevented fatal injury. Her reverie was interrupted when the waitress came over and asked if she needed anything else. Looking around, she realized that the restaurant was crowded and people were waiting for free tables. She apologized for being slow, signed the check, left a tip on the table, and headed out the door. Looking back, she saw that the waitress was still standing at her table. "Could you send a bottle of the same wine to my room?" she asked, and headed towards the elevator. Opening the door to the room, she was shocked to see Charlie Ford sitting in an easy chair by the window with a glass of whiskey in his hand and a smile all over his face. "Hey, baby, I just had to surprise you," he greeted her, standing up and walking towards her. "Charlie, what are you doing here? I asked you not to come. Now is not the right time." The last word was muffled when Charlie kissed her on the lips and pulled her towards him for a hug. "I know I asked," he answered softly, "but this is the first week without you since we've been together, and I can't stand it anymore. Robert doesn't need to know I'm here until he's ready to accept the news." She gently pushed him away. "I'm tired. The day was long and stressful. I'm not ready for a serious conversation right now," she said, looking him straight in the eyes. "I want to drink a glass of wine, which should be on its way. I want to take a hot shower and go to bed, but I'll tell you this. I am Robert's wife. We made vows to each other that I treasure very much. You were very comforting and helpful to me when he was missing, and I didn't know if he was alive or dead, and I will always be grateful to you for that. But now he has been found. He is alive. He is still my husband, and I intend to become his faithful wife again." Charlie started to protest, but she raised her hand to stop him. "I told you that I'm not ready for a serious conversation today. I asked you not to come, but you ignored my request. I'm sure there are other rooms available in this big hotel, so I suggest you go down to the front desk and see what you can do. Or go to Motel 6. I don't care." At that moment, there was a knock on the door from room service. While Peg accepted her bottle of wine and tipped the young man, Charlie took out his suitcase, collected the few things he had taken out, but made no move to leave. "Peggy, you know you love me, and you know I love you. From what you've told me, and from what I already know, Robert is incapable of being a worthy husband to you and probably doesn't even want to be one. I don't like it when people brush me off like that, and I don't intend to quietly leave. I have too much heart and soul invested in this relationship. Nevertheless, I'll go and rent another room. See you tomorrow, and we'll talk then." He picked up his suitcase and went out. Peg stood and looked at the door. Her mind was in turmoil, relief at having found Robert, shame at letting Charlie seduce her, worry about the future, whether she and Robert had a future, and an overwhelming weariness. She quickly poured a glass of wine, took a long sip, then undressed, held her head high, and headed into the shower. She is a strong woman and has always been a problem solver. I knew that I would sort out this situation too. She fell asleep within minutes of her head hitting the pillow. This morning she missed breakfast in the hotel dining room. Not wanting to deal with Charlie, she slipped out the side entrance into the parking lot and drove towards the hospital. Having stopped at a cafe, I bought coffee and a Danish cheese pie, and then headed to Robert. At the nurse's desk, she was told that he slept all night and woke up for breakfast. His concentration seemed to be improving, and doctors hoped the head injuries would not lead to further mental problems. The nurse was just finishing taking his vital signs when Peg entered the room. Her scent immediately told him she was there, and he tensed. She saw how his body shrank, and a worried expression appeared on the part of his face that was not covered with bandages. "Good morning, dear," she said in a gentle voice. She leaned over the bed and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "I was told that you are much better today and that you will recover well." "Yes, I really feel better. They even stopped some of the painkillers and I can think more clearly. And yet, I return to the question, Why are you here? I'm here because you are my husband. I love you. I've worried about you and missed you every minute of every day for 7 years, and I can't wait to get you out of here as soon as you're ready, take you home and resume our life together." He didn't answer her. He was suddenly overcome by fatigue. "I'm tired, Peg, and I can't talk right now. I need a rest." He turned away from her and fell silent. She decided that he had fallen asleep. She felt the phone vibrate in her purse, went out into the corridor and said quietly, "Charlie, good morning. I'm in the hospital. He's conscious, but just lays down to take a nap. No, don't come up here. My presence upsets him, and I'm sure that your presence in the room will be too much. I'll leave soon because I see that he doesn't want me here right now. Lisa will come later, and maybe he'll tell her what's bothering him. I'll call you later when I get back to the hotel." Robert couldn't hear much of what she said due to her quiet speech and the noise of all the monitoring equipment in his room. But he knew that she was talking to Charlie. He knew that Charlie was in town, and he didn't hear anything that could change his mind about them being together. She returned to the room and sat down. He played possum until sleep actually overcame him. Peg, hearing his quiet snoring, gathered her things and left the hospital. Peg didn't know what to do. She didn't feel ready to confront Charlie. She wanted to go to the homeless camp and find Mary. She wanted to better understand what Robert's life was like, why he wanted to return to her, and how close he and Mary had become. Has Mary replaced her in his life? Or, as he said, are they friends who help each other when in physical need? But the main question, the problem that gnawed at her every moment, was why Robert was afraid of her and Charlie. What happened that makes him believe that they are plotting something against him? Does he really think that she had something to do with his accident? Of course, Charlie was persistent, trying to get into her pants. But Charlie is Robert's best friend. Could he believe that Charlie was trying to kill him? Where did this idea come from? She called Charlie and they had lunch at a small diner she had discovered. They had a pleasant time talking, but avoided the obvious question of what the future should be like. Charlie tried to broach the subject, but Peg refused, saying that there was too much uncertainty about Robert's condition and his own desires, as well as whether and how they could rekindle their love affair. "Before I decide anything, I need to understand why he is afraid of me and you," she told him, closing this topic. Soon it was time to go to the airport to meet Lisa. Peg hadn't seen her since spring break, so aside from the circumstances of the situation, it was a reunion between mother and daughter who share a special bond. Peg has spent the past 7 years raising Lisa and Laura as a single mother, with Charlie's help, of course, while the mystery of Robert's disappearance has brought them closer together. After greeting hugs and exam results, Peg told her about her father's situation, his condition, his promising prognosis, his recent living arrangements, his friendship with Mary, and, most alarmingly, his fear. "I am his loving wife. Charlie is his best friend. Why does he think we can hurt him?" "Wait, Mom, do you mean Uncle Charlie, with whom you have been living in the same apartment for the last 7 years? The guy who sold his house and moved in with us, taking his father's place in your bed? Is this the guy you mean?" "Well, yes, but your father doesn't know about it. Until your father disappeared, I flatly refused Charlie. But for some reason, he thinks that we were together. But even if this is so, this does not mean that we should have had a grudge against him, wishing him harm. It does not make sense. I hope he opens up to you so I can understand it." "So, you want me to become your spy? Very nice, Mom." "No, that's not what I mean at all. I want you to allow your father to feel the love of his daughter and his family after such a long separation. I want you both to be able to reconnect in a way that I haven't yet been able to. I want him to come home and become my husband and your father again." "What about Uncle Charlie? What remains for him?" "It's complicated. I made it clear to Charlie that if your father came home, he would have to go and look for another golden goose." "Golden goose? So this is who you are to him?" "Oh, I'm sure he sincerely cares about me. He certainly worked hard to be a part of my life, but I also think he enjoys the comfort and luxury that our family's money provides. And if it comes down to it, I don't think he'll give it all up easily. They went to the hotel, brought Lisa's things into the room, and went to have something to eat on the way to the hospital. Peg expected Charlie to be somewhere nearby, but he was nowhere to be seen. They happily chatted over food and then headed to the medical center. Peg gave Lisa directions to Robert's room and then found a quiet corner in the hallway to wait. "Hello, Dad," said Lisa. "I missed you so much." She walked over to his bed and leaned over to hug him, not knowing what was safe to touch between all those casts and bandages. In the end, she just kissed him on the cheek and took his right hand in both of hers. "Hey, pumpkin," he tried to say, but the words got stuck in his throat. "The hardest part of this whole ordeal is being away from you and Laura. How are you? Is everything okay? I'm so glad you remember me. Oh, Dad, we all missed you, wondered and worried about how and where you were. Nothing was the same without you." She spent the next 2 hours trying to tell him about everything he'd missed. School, boys, field hockey, prom, college life, everything you could think of. She didn't mention Charlie, other than to remember how she and Peg kept looking for him after he snuck out of the hospital. If he wants to know about how Charlie moved in with his mother, he needs to hear it from her herself. Finally, it became clear that as much as he wanted to know about all this, he was simply too tired to continue. And my head hurt really bad. Lisa went down to the hall to meet her mother and found her sitting with a woman who she realized was Mary. After introducing them, Peg explained that Mary had called and she had come to pick her up. "Sorry, I seem to have tired him with stories. He was already falling asleep when I left," Lisa told Mary. "Nothing. I'll just sit and watch him sleep," she said. "Someday he will wake up." Peg reached into her purse and gave Mary some money. "We can't stay, but when it's time to leave, call a taxi. Please don't wait for the bus at this time." As they walked to the car, Lisa explained to Peg that she had done most of the talking during the visit, telling her father about the events in her daughter's lives since he left. "Sorry, Mom, but he didn't really ask about you. I only mentioned Charlie a couple of times and didn't talk about living conditions." Mary sat and watched her sleeping friend. She didn't know much. Will he recover? Will he return to camp or to a comfortable life in Ohio with his wife after leaving her? And why is he so afraid of Peg? She seems like such a sweet woman, not at all like the evil one he told her about. Meanwhile, Charlie was talking on the phone. "Pedro, I'll need you here. Grab the next flight and bring Maria. I'm not getting anything from this bitch." Continued in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the second final part. The link to the second part will be in the description of this video below. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.